Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's been a while. I've had a very busy month and I will continue to have a very busy month upcoming and a very busy summer, very busy rest of the year. I just accepted a new position at a different school and we are looking to buy our first home and moving 3 hours away. Um, so I haven't had a lot of time to read for fun, and I haven't really had any time to record, but do have some time now, and I do think it is important to keep some of your hobbies even when you're very busy. Um, and I really feel like fantasy bingo can kind of be like my little hobby and my personality on YouTube for now. So I'm very interested in continuing it. Unfortunately, earlier in the month, I finished reading a very bad book. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I'm not happy with the book at all. It is The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo, and I've read a couple of Leigh Bardugo books now, and I've always given them I think in terms of star ratings, 3.5 and above. I've enjoyed them. They've never been anything spectacular for me, but I at least enjoyed them. I did not enjoy The Familiar at all. I do not think I was the target audience. Um, for fantasy bingo, I can't even remember which square this satisfies. So I'll probably just put it in the title or the thumbnail. I think I might use it as a romance, and I don't really read a lot of romances, but there is a romance involved in this. So, what went wrong with this novel? I read it at the beginning of the month, and I don't remember too much about it. My brain has ejected it already. I don't remember a lot of the characters' names. I don't remember the setting all that well, the names of the setting and places, but I do remember at least the plot and what I absolutely hated about it. So let's start with all the things I hated about it. Number one, backing up, let's give it at least one positive. And the one positive that I can give it is that the plot had potential to be very interesting because of the setting. This novel takes place during the Spanish Inquisition. I believe, the Spanish Inquisition in Spain, and we follow a character who is hiding the fact that she is Jewish, and she has magical powers. So, excuse me, dropping my pen. She has magical powers that she needs to hide from, those in power. Sounds very interesting. I know Leigh Bardugo used part of her family's history to write this novel. Unfortunately, it's not interesting at all. I don't. This is going to sound insensitive because I know, the Spanish Inquisition, very miserable time in history, awful time in history. A lot of people died, but I'm going to go ahead and say from a modern reader's perspective, I am reading this book as entertainment. How can you take this setting in history and make it so uninteresting? It is so boring. The setting doesn't play really too much of a factor. You don't get too much of the buildings. You don't get too much of the locations. You spend most of this novel in two spots, and it's neither one of the spots are fleshed out, and it's miserable. It's just miserably boring. I just can't stand it. Even think about how much this book put me to sleep. Another thing that I hated was the romance aspect. I don't read a lot of romances. I'm not going to judge people who do. It's not my usual cup of tea, and I was not prepared for that. I didn't know that this book was going to be a romance, so I'm throwing that out to y'all right now that if you are not a fan of romances, maybe stay away from this book. This is one of those romances where, we're supposed to think, oh, will they or won't they get together? But they are also, the two main characters are also incredibly boring. I cannot stand either of them. I don't even know why they like each other. They have zero chemistry. I don't know why our female protagonist falls in love with our male main protagonist. I don't know what he did that was so, I hate saying it, but so charming or attractive. I don't get it. He was using her throughout the beginning of the novel, and she even makes a point of mentioning that, like, she can't trust him, yet she falls for him, and they have a physical relationship as well. I'm just like, where did all this come from? Or my wife says when she reads romance novels like this, she thinks that and when I explained this book to her, she felt like maybe the protagonists fell for each other because they're straight, and that's really it. Like, they have nothing in common besides their magical powers, and they really do have zero chemistry. I am still bugged by that. I was rooting for both of them to die, or at least for their relationship to fall apart at the very least. But this will they or won't they was just very annoying. It was contrived. It was just baloney. It was awful. Speaking of their magical powers, it makes zero sense in the book. There are novels that use, or fantasy novels that use soft magic systems where you can't really define everything. You can't explain the magic, but through reading this book, there are no limits to this magic. Besides, they can't create money, which explains why they're still poor. There are no limits. There's no really limitations. There are no guidelines to how this magic system works. They sing and things happen, or they use their voice and things happen, or later on they think about the words that they're using and magic happens. And I just am questioning why. Throughout this entire novel, I was just questioning over and over the decisions that Leigh Bardugo made, because they were decisions that I would not have made as an author, which is a shame. But I do feel a little vindicated because before this book was released, it got a lot of 5-star ratings on Goodreads. But since its release, it's definitely, if you look at the more recent reviews, it's trending downwards. And I think I'm going to be a straight shooter with this review. I think people should stay away from this book. I think it paints a very problematic relationship with zero chemistry. It paints this historical time period as just uninteresting, and nothing of substance is going to be missed if you don't end up reading this book. I cannot recommend this book to anybody. I cannot recommend it to my enemy. This is going to be the first F grade I'm going to give a book on the channel. It is going to end up being one of my least favorite books of all time, I think. There are a lot of things I could say about this book, more things, but again, I read it at the beginning of the month, and I think as a coping mechanism and as a defense mechanism, I have already thrown a lot of the book out of my brain. Don't read this book, The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo. That's all I got. Unfortunately, Fantasy Bingo, it has a bad square, but I'll use it for the romance square. How about that? For my next Fantasy Bingo, I have a couple of fantasy books. Again, I am moving, starting a new job, so I don't know how much time I'll have, but I am looking to read Neon Ghosts by Daniel Green. I think there's an indie square, and I want to read The Spear Cuts Through Water. Those are my next two fantasy reads. They're not my next two reads, but they are my next two fantasy reads. Looking forward to those two. That's all I got for today. Like, subscribe, do whatever. I'll see you in the next one. Hopefully, I should have a wrap-up coming up pretty soon, because I did read in May. But, yeah, The Familiar. Bleh. Peace.